Hey, what's up guys, it's Apollo Uchiha here, back with another part of our Naruto was banished and married an empress. And before continuing this series, if you haven't, please subscribe to my channel if you like the content of this channel, and leave a like on this video if you like this part, and comment down below. And without further ado, let's continue our story. Getting a hold of herself, Ino smiled devilishly. With a glint of evil in her eye, she muttered under her breath, "My gossip sense is tingling. Gossips on an empress sex life, that would be my ultimate accomplishment." Quickly grabbing Kakashi and Kai, she threw them on an empty couch before taking her place in the doorway. "Nobody leaves this room until I have a complete report on the possible activities of these three. I want gossip." With a sigh, Tsunade got up and went to the door. Stopping in front of her fellow young blonde, she challenged the youngster with a glare. It didn't take more than a second for Ino to shift to the side, saluting a leaving passage for her Hokage. With a smile, Tsunade took the civilized person's exit. She could have used the window, but she felt it was unbecoming of the Hokage. Once she had exited the hotel, she decided to forego any dignity and sped to Naruto's house. She reached her destination in barely a minute. That shack wasn't that far inland, and she knew the way. Once there, she tentatively approached the door and hesitated before knocking. "Something on your mind, Hime?" Looking above her shoulder, she saw Jiraiya in a tree, leaning against the trunk and standing on a branch. "You know what's on my mind? I thought she was dead. But she's not." "Yeah, and I'm happy for that, but I can't help but wonder if she blames me for everything." "Only one way to find out." Tsunade nodded and knocked. After a moment, the door slid open and revealed the impassive Hinata. As soon as the former hero saw the Hokage, her face relaxed. "Oh, it's you, Tsunade-sama. Please come in." The blonde nodded and stepped inside to the house. Then in the living room, there she saw Hiyashi, more shocked than she had ever seen him, sitting on a couch with Hanabi patting one of his hands and Fu on the other side snickering. "What's the problem, old man? There are plenty of people who'd love to have two in-laws with the same child, so stop gaping like that, will ya?" Of course, this did nothing to improve the poor clan head situation, but it did increase Fu's laughter. Tsunade herself couldn't help but snicker at the display. Hinata walked past her and went to sit in Naruto's lap, the blonde being currently seated in an armchair, and Neji leaning against a wall, and was looking at the scene with a bemused expression on his face. Once seated, Hinata turned to her consort. "Now Fu-chan, what did I tell you about teasing father? He's a very traditional man. Give him some time to accept the concept, will you?" Yeah, sorry, but can't help it." Satisfied with the answer, Hinata looked back at Tsunade and noticed she was still standing in the doorway. "Tsunade-sama, why don't you take a seat?" said Hinata, motioning for a free armchair, probably the one Hinata had been sitting in. And with a nod, the slug princess took place in the chair, settling her gaze on Hiyashi. "How long has he been like that?" Maybe a minute or two. Don't worry, he'll come around eventually." When mother told him she was pregnant and with Hanabi, he was shocked for a whole day. "I see you are here alone. I take it that isn't a social visit." Tsunade took a deep breath to calm herself. "Hinata, I'm sorry for banishing me. It wasn't your fault. You were dealing with pain the way you were used to. It's just the Yuga elders' fault. They took advantage of it, and they paid for it. Even though I feel they should have suffered more, well, what's done is done." Tsunade nodded, feeling relieved, but she couldn't get herself to relax. The guilt just wouldn't go away, but it was to be expected. She had lived with it for too long for it to go away after just a few words. With a sigh, she turned to Naruto. The blonde was happily resting his chin on the empress' shoulder. Never before had he looked so happy, and Tsunade was relieved to see that things were looking up for him. Turning back to Hinata, she made a quick decision. "I understand you are going to marry Naruto, correct?" "Well, we plan to take time before that, but yes, it is planned. He proposed to both of us this afternoon. He even bought the rings already." "Hey, my girls deserve the best!" exclaimed Naruto with his patted smile, causing a smile and blush to appear on Hinata's and Fu's face. "I see," said Tsunade, a smile playing on her lips. "Well, I'd like to be able to visit the knucklehead when he lives in the Empire, and I'm pretty sure I won't be the only one. And there's only And there's also the matter of your friends. I think they'll want to be at the wedding and be able to visit from time to time. Nothing a good little treaty can take care of, though I'd really like to wait until tomorrow before negotiating that. I'd like to spend some time with my husband to be. Certainly, Sonata smiled. I can imagine how much you want to keep him nearby after being separated from him for 6 years already. Hinata smiled and nodded. The evening was spent talking lightly and trying to get Hiyashi over his shock, with little success. It didn't take long for Jiraiya to join the group once Hinata began cooking dinner with Naruto's help. Link break. The next morning, Hinata, Fu, and Naruto got up a little bit early to prepare for the day. Fu decided to go with Hinata to negotiations, and since his two lovely ladies were gone, Naruto decided to have a little walk on the beach. The blonde was in an exceptionally good mood this morning, and the beautiful scenery did nothing to dampen his spirits. The waves were softly crashing on the sand, the sky was a beautiful shade of blue, and there were barely any clouds. On the horizon, he could see one of the many boats that came to the island, and a very rare sight from his beach. Away from all maritime roads, he noted he'd have to tell the Raikage and the Tsuchikage to stop the search. So lost was he in the thought of his own little world that when the canister began whistling, it was already too late. Link break. It took some time for Naruto's disappearance to be noted, but once it happened, wave descended into chaos. Everyone searched for the young man who brought peace so easily. Finally, just after noon, a canister was discovered on a beach near the north of the island, and soon after the whole Konoha, Suna, and Imperial parties were gathered on the beach, looking for clues. The canister bore the emblem of a pirate gang known to abduct nobles to extort ransom. Looking at the canister in her hands, Tsunade swore under her breath. No one knew what harbor these pirates used, and they operated along the whole coast, meaning they didn't even had ways to narrow the search. Looking at Hinata and Fu as they silently conversed, she wondered what thoughts went through their heads. As soon as Naruto had been reported missing, they had gotten out of their formal yukatas and adorned their battle clothing. Fu's shirt now had 3 small plates, the same color as her chest plates, on the top of each sleeve, and 2 equally green pendulums shaped as horns. Horns beetle had topped her howry. The blonde Kage noting with interest that her armor seemed sturdier. While impressive, the change wasn't too out of place. She had already been seen in battle clothing. This was just a bit heavier. Hinata, on the other hand, she now wore a long dark blue kimono top that opened on the front past the belt, revealing matching pants. Her chest was covered with a dark purple breastplate, pauldrons shaped as dragon heads resting on her shoulders, 3 purple plates resting on her sleeves just below them. Resting on her forehead, a gold circlet representing a dragon clutching the pearl of wisdom in its talons completed the outfit. When they stopped talking, Hinata took a few steps forward and suddenly began pulsing with energy, catching the attention of everyone present on the beach. Red ghostly antlers akin to those of a deer grew on her head. Dark red markings appeared around her eyes, almost like a blood red fire spreading on her skin from around her eyes. She then stepped close to the place the canister had been found at and kneeled. She concentrated for a second, and then her head snapped up suddenly, looking straight at the sea to the north. "You got it?" asked Fu, some worry in her voice. "Yes, his chakra trail leads north." Fu nodded, and the Imperial couple began to walk towards the sea. "Wait a minute," called Tsunade. "You don't know exactly where their base is. They have easily 200 men, and you won't have any backup, and that's not mentioning the distance you'd be covering." They both turned their heads to look at her, a confident smug plaster on their faces. "We already crossed larger distances before, and if the Sage Mode doesn't betray me, something it never did, then they are on Whirlpool Island," answered Hinata. Now if you excuse us, said Fu, we have to get our man back and show exactly why we are feared in the West. Before anyone else could say a thing, their chakra flared and as two insect wings appeared on Fu's back and Hinata was surrounded by a thin cloak of red chakra. In a burst of speed they were gone, leaving only two trails of raised water in their wake. Link break. They were running or flying at a speed never achieved before, tearing through the air at such high speed that they actually had to use chakra to force air to come into their lungs and to keep their bodies in one piece. Something that was made somewhat easier by the natural or demonic chakra flowing through their bodies. But they didn't care about that. They had a goal, one that came steadily closer. After a full hour of running at such frightening speed, they finally caught a glimpse of their goal, Whirlpool. As they grew closer, they began to slow a bit down, allowing the tunnel vision effect to recede somewhat. The closer they grew, the easier they could see an old harbor made of wooden structure gathered in a stone fortress, probably raised with the use of ninjutsu. Fu began waving through hand seals using her most powerful original technique, the most powerful right-on technique ever created. As she held the last seal, a ball of lightning began forming in front of her mouth, growing in size quickly until it was the same size as her head. Then it suddenly shrank and she closed her mouth around it. Her cheeks puffed and she released the attack, letting loose the closest thing to a Bijudama a human could make. The compressed ball of lightning flew through the air at an even higher speed than they were, impacting the wall of the fortress in a great explosion of lightning. The wall exploded inversely, peppering the building behind it with fragments of stone, killing many and deafening the survivors. Fu took some speed, dashing through the dust cloud, dispersing the wings and unsealing her bow before slamming down on the ground, sending a concentrated wave of lightning around her to cover her entrance. Soon after, Hinata joined her. Looking around, they saw the pirates and the occasional deserters gathered around them. A good part of them was still deafened, and they looked at them with terror in their eyes. They could comprehend what was happening. And then they understood that there was only two women attacking them, and they assumed the attack that breached the wall had to have taken a huge amount of chakra reserves out of them. Confidence began to flood them again. Hinata looked at them with disdain. She had fought men far worthier during the war, and she felt insulted that these fools thought they could fight them. Turning to her consort, she smiled. "My dear, could you please take care of them?" "Yes, why? You always knew better than I know how to entertain this kind of public. Love, just don't overdo it, okay?" Yeah, I got it, Hinata-chan. I'll leave this island in one piece, mostly." With a smirk on her face, Hinata began walking towards the entrance to the fortress. A group of thugs moved to block her. She just kept walking on, her feet moving at a paced rhythm, the confident grin never leaving her face. When the first thug was close enough, she swiped her right hand in an upwards movement, starting at her left hip and slashing diagonally, conjuring a sword construct made out of natural energy in an instant. As the man died, she swirled to the side, avoiding the spray of blood, calmly resuming her walk. She noted with amusement that the other had stopped their charge upon seeing their comrade's death. She took 3 more steps before they charged again. At once this time, the smile stayed on her face as around 20 men charged at her with various weapons. Summoning a second sword, she calmly walked towards the charging men. A spear was thrusted in her direction. She beheaded it by twirling one of her swords, spinning the tip around the same sword before slamming the flat of the blade on the butt of the recent shortened spear, sending it sailing through the air and the skull of the spear wielder. She spun to the left, avoiding a strike from a Tatsubo, beheading the wielder, then ducking under the slash of a sword, sidestepping and rising as she ran both her blades across her enemy's belly, disemboweling him. I don't know what that even means. Anybody can tell me what that means in the comments? Disemboweling him. Parrying a giant with a sword, she cut the arms of a bulky axe wielder with the other, causing the big and heavy weapon raised high to fall on his head with a wet crack sound. Spinning to avoid the blood gushing from the severed arms of the falling bodies, she ran through the sword wielder before resuming her walk. Throwing her left blade into the air, she summoned 5 throwing knives constructed from chakra, sending them towards her assailants, killing one of the men from each knife before catching the sword. Having no more use for the knives, she left them to dissolve. A man ran to her, a knife in each hand, certain he would be able to kill her with speed. Hinata sidestepped him, letting him run on her blades as it cut through him, leaving the two halves fall to the ground. A woman, one of the few female pirates, charged at her, nunchuck spinning wildly in her hands. She attacked with the left, only to have Hinata cut effortlessly through the chains, letting the weighted end sail straight into the face of one of her allies trying to surround her. Killing the man before the shocked woman could recover, Hinata had spun around her, running her sword across her throat, leaving the woman to bleed out. She turned her attention to the other thugs still in front of her. 10 steps, 20 seconds, 12 deaths, and she hadn't even been hit by a droplet of blood. In the background, she could hear screams of pain, agony, and fear, explosions of fire and thunder. Looking carefully over the opposition, she saw fear and confusion. It was a mix she knew very well. She would often see it on the faces of elite guards when she would lead a small strike force to take out gnawing warlords back during the war. With a vicious smile, she dashed forward. Not expecting this, her frightened enemies couldn't react in time. As she flew past the two first, she cut cleanly through their necks. She threw one of her blades into the head of a bandit and a bit far on her left, then grabbed the one closer to her and threw him onto the sword of one of his comrades, using the distraction to rapidly stab through both men's heart. 4 men remained, all of them were shaking in fear, and it was clear that they had already sullied themselves. With another dash, Hinata was upon them, summoning a new sword and using them both to cleave 2 bandits in halves at their midsection. Before jumping high, avoiding the blood as she descended towards one of the last 2 bandits, he turned to run, not realizing it was useless. Seeing no reason to tire herself, Hinata used the man's neck as a springboard, propelling herself with a pulse of chakra, breaking his neck in the process before slamming her right foot into the face of the last man, using another burst of chakra to launch herself into the backflip as the man went sailing into and through the wooden wall of a nearby building. With the roads cleared, Hinata entered the fortress. Link break. Naruto was staring at the door. He was in a cell without any window, and judging from the stench of blood and sex, its precedent habitant was a woman. He had awoken an hour ago, and since then he had carefully contemplated his options. Before losing consciousness, he had enough time to see the canister and recognize the symbol. He knew of these pirates and didn't doubt one moment that they would kill him if they didn't get what they wanted, or at least they'd try, especially once you consider the loud explosion that shook the place just a minute earlier. With a sigh, he accepted the fact that only one possibility remained. He'd have to fight. Sitting on the floor, he dived into himself to face his tenant. As he appeared before the mighty cage, his gaze looked with the red eyes looking at him curiously. "I need your help, Kurama." A sinister grin appeared behind the gates. "About time you asked, kid." Link break. Yajiro Isayama sighed for what felt like the 100th time today. The idiots up there had managed to blow the armory again. The hierarchy really needed to release how dumb it was to leave explosive tags in the care of barely educated thugs. He was one of the few ninjas to be part of the private pirate fleet, and in all honesty, he wished he wasn't. He was originated from Kiri but had deserted to stick with one of his friends. When the guy tried to kill him for fun, it was already too late to turn back. Since then, his life had been a long hell. Always on the run, always fighting the scum to have enough to live. Hunted by both the Hunter Corps and other deserters to cash in on the small bounty. His mind turned to the prisoner after the explosion. He had been sent to see if he was still in one piece. It saddened him this boy Naruto, he believed was his name, was known throughout the elemental nations as a mediator and a peacebringer, a great man, the leader. He didn't even remember the bastard's name. Said it would be their greatest hit and that it would bring plenty of money to spend. But the guy was so bloodthirsty, it was downright impossible for him to let the boy leave this island alive. This Naruto would die on this island, probably in his very cell. Lucky the girl that preceded him in there, such a waste. Once again, Yaijiro cursed his luck. If he hadn't been ill last week, he would have been able to go on a raid and slip by. He would have then rushed to Wave to warn them before setting off to the new empire and start anew. But it wouldn't be happening anytime soon. Yajiro felt his heart drop even lower. He had seen too much meaningless deaths, too many innocent killed for nothing but the pleasure of a few sick men. And even his hands were stained by blood. Why, mister? A wet cough threw crimson on his blue sleeves. I've been good. The little girl collapsed, her empty eyes still locked on his, her face still bearing an expression of confusion. Yaijiro suppressed his tears. The little girl had been good and generous, giving him food and shelter for the night. But her village had to be attacked and he had been forced to fight alongside the other pirates, and he had to kill her. He hadn't even realized it at the moment. They didn't even know each other's name. Yet she was so important to him, a symbol of purity. She had been his only unjustified kill, and that would always haunt him. One he would never forgive himself for. Like countless times before, he took what little comfort he could in the fact that he could at least bury her. With yet another sigh, he opened the door to the cell, but as soon as the door opened, pain erupted his chest. He could only see a mask in the image of a fox and the cold blue eyes behind it. A soft chuckle escaped his lips. He was dying. Looks like our little hermit is a bit more. Yajiro slumped against the hermit as the young man pulled him into the cell, his hand still buried in his chest. Before Naruto could talk, Yajiro did. There are 5 guards at the end of the corridor. One shinobi. He isn't very skilled. After that there is the mess. No one should be there. They ate an hour ago. After that, watch out for the lead guy when you go into the throne room. He's a former Iwa Jonin. Bastards. 3 other Jonin level deserters. If you need weapons, I got some kunai and shuriken. Couple of tags too. The hermit looked at him for a few moments. Why are you helping me? 'Cause you're worth it. More than me. If you get out of here, then I have done one good thing in my shitty life. Now get going before I kick your ass for ruining my shirt. With a blooded smile, Yajiro shakingly handed his weapon to the young hermit. Before exiting the room, Naruto looked at him once more, hesitated for a second, then nodded in gratitude before taking off. Screams of surprise and a few wet gurgles told Yajiro what he needed to know. The kid had made it. Darkness slowly fell down on him. He could feel himself vanish, but he felt at peace. In a distance, he heard the little girl's voice again. Come on, Yaini-san, stop sleeping. You said we'll play ninja. Link break. Sojiro Hashimoto was not having a good day. Yet it had started so well, with the abduction of the hermit going without a hitch. But known as unknown force was attacking his base, he had been forced to barricade himself in the throne room with his guards and wait for the enemy. He knew nothing of them, not their number, not their skills, and certainly not their objective. There was only one thing that Sojuro hated more than day without blood, and it was uncertainty. He had recalled the shinobi in his forces from throughout the base to defend the throne room, the easiest position to hold in the fortress with only one access to the outside. So far, the only one not to report had been the dead, those trapped in the courtyard, and those two idiots in the prison. Suddenly there was screaming outside of the room, first screams of anger and hatred, then the roars of techniques converging in a closed space. A brief moment of silence. Sojiro's face paled as a cacophony of pain and frightening screams began to mix in the sound of a blade tearing through flesh. Link break. Hinata was spinning, disemboweling a man before running a kunoichi through. She leapt avoid a sword strike before kicking the man's head, sending a burst of chakra to fry his brain. Spinning in mid-air, she turned her sword into throwing knives that she quickly threw on the gathered shinobi, too fast for them to evade, killing 3 more. Summoning 2 new swords, she landed behind a man, cleaving him in half while spinning and beheading another. Stepping to the side, she allowed a water jutsu to pass by her and slam an enemy into a wall, cracking it and snapping the man's spine. Twirling her blade into a reverse creep, she thrust into the 2 men approaching from behind before dashing forward, taking 2 hits in the process before twirling her swords back into their normal position and relieving a man of his arms and piercing his heart. With a kick, she sent him into the one behind him, crushing him against the wall. Only 17 somewhat professional shinobis to stop her. It was laughable. She almost felt insulted, but then again, she didn't have time to warn about her arrival, so it wasn't as fun as it could have been. Turning to the last remaining ninja, she smiled sweetly, causing the already shaken man to take a few steps back, ending up pressing against the door. Surprised, he turned his head to see what was blocking his retreat. When he turned his head back, Hinata was upon him, a savage smile on her face as she delivered a powerful kick to his chest, causing his ribs to collapse, crushing his heart and throwing him through the door. The Empress calmly stood into the room, still untouched by blood. The man standing in front of her, the throne, paled when he saw just exactly what happened to his troops. He couldn't comprehend how a single girl could have slaughtered so many veterans. She had to be a Kage level at least. Then she talked. You are to stand down and surrender or kill yourself. Failure to comply will be met with a gruesome death. Sojiro met the gaze of 3 guards and hardened his resolve. She was alone. There were 4. The idiots in the corridor were cannon fodders. Nothing more, just a bunch of talentless losers. He had beaten each of them, so what if she had killed them? He'd just have to kill her, and then he'd have his fun with her, and he would rebuild his pirate band. Who the fuck do you bitch think you are to order us around? He blowed, satisfied with the confidence in his wife, but it dropped when she chuckled darkly. I am an empress. The air grew cold around Sojiro when he realized just who was standing in front of him. My word! In a flash, she had disappeared, reappearing in front of one of his guards, her sword in his guts. Is law. Taking her sword out, she spun them in her hands, severing the man's arm and at the shoulder before beheading him and backflipping out of reach. All of that before even a drop of blood could jump out of the wounds. At this moment, one of the walls exploded, stone fell flying into the room. Sojiro grabbed one of his surprised bodyguard and used him as a shield for both him and the remaining one, leaving the poor lad he held to be peppered by stone fragments. When he finally let go of the body, he saw a scene from his worst nightmare. In the opening stood Fu, the ruins of the fortress burning in the back as columns of black smoke rose from the harbor. Looking at the courtyard, he saw countless red stains, while Hinata Hinata was completely clean. Fu hadn't bothered to evade the blood splatters, and a part of her clothing was covered in red, and the vital liquid was slowly dripping from her bow staff. Ah, I love killing cannon fodders. It's so much fun, they never know what hit them. Now Sojiro knew he was dead. Even he had heard of the War Master, and seeing her in person, he now believed the rumors saying she had a demonic blood, for only a demon could slaughter so many men and come out unscratched, but life clearly didn't have enough, and wanted to make his day worse because the door lead to the prison chose this very moment to explode as a limb of body fall through that. It was one of his cards, and suddenly a blood-red chakra shot through it, grabbing his last card and cording him to that as he howled blood-curdling screams of agony. Through the remains of the door, Naruto stood calmly covered in a blood-red cloak of chakra and a mask covering his face. Fu and Hinata were surprised to see him using his chakra, but they were happy to see him alive as well. As for Naruto, he was pleased to see that his two lovely ladies had come to his rescue. Without talking, he simply made his way to stand alongside Hinata, as did Fu. Sojiro, now thoroughly shocked, simply collapsed on the throne, looking at the three beings in front of him. "What kind of monsters are you?" "We," said Naruto. "Are," continued Fu. "Shinobi," concluded Hinata. Naruto began gathering chakra as Fu and Hinata went through hand seals at high speeds. They all finished at the same time, discharging their techniques on him. Katon, Fox Fury. Katon, Dragon's Range. Futon's Seven Winds Blade. The techniques intertwined, becoming one pillar of bright blue flames, serenading Sojiro in an instant and partially melting the throne. They looked at their work for a moment before turning to the gaping hole in the wall and walked out and down the wall. "So Narukun, something you want to tell us?" "Heh, I kinda hope not to have to use Kurama's chakra again, but besides, if it gets out that I can use chakra, it may cause problems." "You can use chakra besides the cubies." A small silence followed. "Might as well come clean right away. Just so you know, I plan to tell you. No one knows, but Kurama trashed the seal on me when I befriended him about 3 years ago. It was painful and took some time, but it was done. And in all honesty, if the asshole who sealed me really knew what he was doing, it would have been irremovable." Fu stopped dead in her tracks as the other two turned to see what was wrong with her. They saw a grin full of pervertedness and a small trickle of blood running down her nose. "So, you can use shadow clones again." A small nosebleed afflicted both Hinata and Naruto at the same time when they realized just what she had in mind. Hinata then grabbed Fu's arm and proceeded to drag her towards the middle of the courtyard, with Naruto following closely behind. Once there, she summoned a dragon and requested him to fly them back to Wave. Tsunade and the Suna and Konoha delegations had remained on the beach waiting and hoping that Fu and Hinata would succeed. When the dragon appeared, everyone gathered, trying to see how many people were on its head. Of course, the smartest one asked the Yuga. Yashi, being the most powerful, activated his Byakugan and slightly overcharged it in order to see farther. After a quick look, he deactivated his eyes to avoid damages and let out a relieved sigh. "Yashi, does that mean Tsunade didn't know if she could be hopeful or not? It seems I will still have grandchildren," was Yashi's answer, but it was enough for everyone to understand, and many cheered. When the dragon was close enough for the three people to jump off, there were a few more cheers as they landed on the beach, but the mood was a bit lowered by the sheer amount of blood on Fu's clothing. After the whole situation was explained, Naruto using of chakra being left out, everyone calmed down and let the three go for Naruto's house to have a rest and well-deserved meal. As this is where I'm going to be leaving this part of, guys. I know I kind of mispronounce a lot of stuff, and honestly, I'm kind of trying to improve my English, but I guess it's not working at all. So yeah, after getting my PC repaired or getting a new laptop, I might start, giving you guys well cut out and well content. I can't describe it in the words. I don't have the words to pronounce it. Anyways, this is Apollo Chiha and I am signing out. Peace.